He walked into the arena, shoulders squared, eyes cold, the weight of 1,000 generations pressing down on him. The lights dimmed, the crowd roared, and the chant echoed like thunder. Acknowledge me. But behind the power, behind the championships, behind the icy stare of the tribal chief, is a man who's been broken, doubted, sick, rejected, and forced to rise again. This is the story of Roman Reigns. Stay with me till the very end of this journey, because his story isn't just about wrestling. It's about family. It's about survival. It's about finding out who you really are when the world refuses to see you. And trust me, by the end, you'll never look at Roman Reigns the same way again. And hey, if you love stories that inspire, shock, and make you feel every emotion along the way, make sure to hit subscribe right now, because this channel is where legends come to life. Now let's begin. Roman Reigns was not always Roman Reigns. He was born Liati Joseph Anoa'i on May 25, 1985, in Pensacola, Florida. But his story began long before that, with a dynasty. The Anoa'i family wasn't just a family. They were a force. Generations of Samoan warriors turned wrestlers. His father, Sika, of the Wild Samoans. His cousins, The Rock, Yokozuna, Rikishi, Umaga, the Usos. A bloodline built on grit, sweat, and pain. But little Joe? He wasn't supposed to be the golden boy. He wasn't the loudest. He wasn't the flashiest. What he had was quiet determination.
As a kid, he fell in love with sports. Football became his escape. At Pensacola Catholic High, then Escambia High, he was a star. Fast, strong, unstoppable. He pushed his body like a machine, and soon he earned a spot with the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Wearing number 96, he became a captain, a leader, a powerhouse. And here's a hidden gem. Roman's roommate at Georgia Tech was none other than Calvin Johnson, who went on to become one of the greatest wide receivers in NFL history. Imagine that dorm room, future NFL legend and future WWE megastar, side by side. But football, like life, can be cruel. Roman went undrafted in 2007. He tried the Minnesota Vikings. He tried the Jacksonville Jaguars. Each time, cut. His dreams slipping away. He even gave the Canadian Football League a shot with the Edmonton Eskimos. But in 2008, after just one season, he was released. His football journey was over. Most men would have broken. Roman didn't. Instead, he looked back to where it all began, his family. Wrestling wasn't just in his blood, it was his destiny. In 2010, he signed with WWE's developmental territory, Florida Championship Wrestling. Gone was Joe Anoa'i, the football player. Enter Roman Reigns, the wrestler. At first, he wasn't special, just another body in trunks. But watch closely. You could see the hunger in his eyes. He wasn't there to blend in. He was there to take over. And then, 2012 happened. The Shield. Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose. They stormed onto the scene in black tactical gear, tearing through everyone. They weren't just a faction, they were chaos. And Roman? He was the muscle. Silent, deadly. Spears that cut opponents in half. Fans didn't know his name yet, but they knew one thing. This guy was dangerous. Surprising fact number 2. Roman once eliminated 12 men in a single Royal Rumble match, breaking Kane's legendary record. The world took notice. This wasn't just a sidekick. This was a future star. But here's the twist. WWE wanted Roman Reigns to be the guy, the chosen one, John Cena's successor. And fans hated it.
For years, Roman fought not just in the ring, but against the audience. Every main event, Every promo, every WrestleMania. WWE pushed him higher. Fans pushed him lower. It was brutal. But in 2018, something happened that no one saw coming. Roman walked into Raw one night, holding the Universal Championship. The crowd booed, but then he spoke. "My name is Joe, and I've been living with leukemia for 11 years. The world stopped. Fans who despised him were now in tears. Roman revealed he had to give up his title, not because of a storyline, because his cancer had returned. It was raw. It was real. It was devastating. The arena fell into silence. Grown men cried. Women covered their mouths in shock. For years, people booed him, mocked him, rejected him. But on that night in 2018, Roman Reigns wasn't the chosen one. He wasn't the face of the company. He wasn't even the big dog. He was Joe Anoa'i, a husband, a father, a man with leukemia. And then he said the words that shattered the WWE universe. "I can't fulfill my role. I have to relinquish the Universal Championship." He laid the belt down, the very symbol of his blood, sweat, and sacrifice. For a second, you could hear a pin drop, and then the applause. Not boos, not jeers, just love. Roman stepped away from the ring and began a new battle: chemotherapy, pain, uncertainty. But if there's one thing his life had prepared him for, it was fighting when the world doubted him. 4 months later, in February 2019, his music hit on Raw. The fans exploded, and when Roman grabbed the mic, he smiled and said, "The big dog is back, and in remission." The cheers shook the arena. It was redemption. For once, the fans weren't rejecting him, they were embracing him. He had turned his greatest weakness into his greatest strength. But Roman wasn't satisfied being liked. He had been cheered before, he had been booed louder. This time, he needed something different, something real. In 2020, the pandemic struck. Empty arenas, silent shows. Wrestling without fans felt hollow. Roman stayed home at first, protecting himself and his family. His leukemia made him vulnerable. People wondered, was this the end of his career?
Then came SummerSlam 2020. The lights, the silence, and then his music. Roman Reigns returned. But this wasn't the Roman we knew. His beard was fuller, his eyes were colder, and beside him stood Paul Heyman, the mastermind once loyal to Brock Lesnar. Roman Reigns had changed. No more smiling, no more suffering succotash promos, no more trying to be the hero WWE wanted him to be. He had embraced his destiny. He was the tribal chief. And this wasn't just a gimmick, it was personal. Samoan culture is built on respect, family, and leadership. The head of the table isn't given power, he takes it. Roman wasn't asking for cheers anymore, he was demanding acknowledgement. The fans leaned in. Suddenly the man they once booed became must-see. Every word carried weight, every stare felt like fire, every spear was a declaration of dominance. And then the bloodline was born. Roman didn't just return to win matches, he built an empire. The Usos, his cousins, stood by his side. With Paul Heyman as his counsel, they controlled WWE like no faction since the days of the Four Horsemen. The story wasn't just about victories, it was about family. The Usos questioning him, Jey Uso refusing to fall in line, Roman beating him down until he had no choice but to acknowledge his cousin. It was brutal, it was emotional, it was Shakespeare with Samoan steel chairs. Here's surprising fact number 3. Roman Reigns has held a world championship longer than legends like Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Austin, and even his cousin, The Rock. He became untouchable. Edge, beaten.
Daniel Bryan, beaten. Rey Mysterio, beaten. John Cena, beaten. Brock Lesnar, defeated not once, not twice, but multiple times. Every pay-per-view, every main event, Roman stood tall. The tribal chief wasn't just the top guy, he was the company. But here's the twist. Dominance always comes with cracks. The more Roman demanded loyalty, the more fragile his empire became. Jey Uso bent the knee, but at what cost? Jimmy Uso questioned him. Families were torn apart. Roman screamed. Roman cried. Roman punished anyone who dared step out of line. The Bloodline saga became the greatest wrestling story of the modern era. And at its center, Roman Reigns, not just a champion, a manipulator, a king, a man both loved and feared. By 2023, his reign as Universal Champion had passed 1,000 days, longer than anyone in decades. Fans who once rejected him now acknowledged him as one of the greatest of all time. And yet, here's a hidden gem most people don't know. Roman Reigns has headlined more WrestleManias than Stone Cold Austin. Let that sink in.
The man once booed out of the building, now in rarefied air with the legends. But Roman isn't done. Not by a long shot. Because every time you think his story is over, he writes another chapter. And the next one might be the most shocking yet. By now, Roman Reigns wasn't just a champion. He was a ruler, the tribal chief, the head of the table. His word was law, his dominance unquestioned. But here's the thing about power. It always creates enemies. And sometimes the greatest threats don't come from the outside. They come from within. The cracks in the bloodline began to show. Jey Uso, once broken and humbled into acknowledging Roman, started to find his fire again. Jimmy Uso, his twin, wasn't blind to the manipulation. The family dinners weren't the same anymore. The laughter had turned into tension. The respect had turned into fear. And the world was watching, because this wasn't just wrestling. This was family civil war. At Clash of Champions, Roman forced Jey to acknowledge him by brutalizing him until Jimmy threw in the towel. The look on Roman's face wasn't of joy. It was of necessity. He wasn't satisfied until every cousin, every brother, every family member bowed to him. It was cruel. It was heartbreaking. But it was also captivating. Hidden gem number 4. Roman once admitted in an interview that these bloodline stories were deeply personal. He wasn't acting. He was channeling real conversations, real expectations, real family pressure. That's why it felt so authentic. Because it was. The storyline only grew darker. Jey Uso, torn between loyalty and freedom. Jimmy Uso finally snapping and turning against Roman. Solo Sikoa, the younger cousin, stepping in as Roman's enforcer. Piece by piece, the family was ripped apart before the world's eyes. And through it all, Roman remained cold, stoic, calculating, the perfect villain who believed, deep down, that he was the hero. But every ruler has rivals, and Roman's throne was constantly challenged. Drew McIntyre in the UK, Cody Rhodes, hungry to finish his story, Brock Lesnar, returning again and again like a beast who refused to die. Every time, Roman survived, not by luck, not by chance, by pure will, by pure dominance. Spears through barricades, guillotine chokes that left legends gasping. Mind games that left challengers questioning their own purpose. And yet, fans weren't booing anymore. They weren't rejecting him. They were mesmerized. Roman Reigns had achieved what seemed impossible.
he had turned hate into obsession. By 2023, his reign of champion had passed 1,000 days. Numbers that felt unreal in the modern era. Roman wasn't just holding the belt. He was holding history. But here's a surprising fact most fans miss. Roman Reigns has spent more cumulative days as world champion than The Undertaker. Think about that. The dead man, the legend, surpassed by the man once booed out of arenas.
Still, with every new record came new questions. How long could he keep it up? Who could possibly dethrone him? And more importantly, what would happen to Roman Reigns without the championship? Because here's the truth, the tribal chief isn't just about gold, it's about power, respect, legacy. Without the belt, without control over his family, who is Roman Reigns? The whispers began. Could Cody Rhodes finish his story? Could Seth Rollins, his old Shield brother, finally humble him? Could even Solo, the Enforcer, betray him in the end? The possibilities made fans lean in even closer. Every SmackDown, every pay-per-view wasn't just a wrestling show, it was an episode of the greatest drama WWE had ever produced. Roman stood in the center of it all, calm, calculating, always 2 steps ahead. And every time the walls seemed to close in, he found a way to keep his empire alive. But if you look closely, you can see it. The exhaustion in his eyes, the paranoia in his voice, the weight of carrying not just a company, but a dynasty on his back. Roman Reigns is the tribal chief, but he is also still Joe Anoa'i, the boy from Pensacola who once dreamed of playing in the NFL, the man who fought leukemia twice, the father who wants to raise his children outside the spotlight. And maybe that's why his story resonates so deeply, because beneath the championships, beneath the glory, is a man constantly battling against illness, against rejection, against betrayal, against himself. The story isn't over. The empire may one day fall, but one thing is certain. Roman Reigns has already cemented his place in history, not just as a champion, not just as the tribal chief, but as one of the greatest storytellers wrestling has ever seen. The empire still stands, the tribal chief still rules, but history has taught us one undeniable truth. Every dynasty, no matter how powerful, faces its end. The question isn't if, the question is when. Roman Reigns knows it. You can see it in his eyes during every entrance. The slow walk, the golden lei around his neck, the championship belts glistening under the spotlight. He carries himself like a king, but also like a man who understands that someday, someone will finally conquer him.
And that's the beauty of Roman's story. He isn't just a champion, he's a challenge, a mountain standing in the middle of WWE, daring anyone to climb it. But who can? Cody Rhodes? Seth Rollins? Solo Sikoa himself? Or maybe someone we haven't even seen yet? That mystery keeps fans glued to their screens, because when the day comes, it won't just be a title change, it will be the end of an era. But Roman's legacy doesn't depend on how or when he loses. His legacy is already written. Hidden gem number 5. Did you know Roman Reigns has main evented more consecutive WrestleManias than Hulk Hogan? That's right, the man once rejected by the crowd has now surpassed one of WWE's most iconic figures in the biggest spotlight of them all. And his story isn't only about the ring. Beyond WWE, Roman has become an icon in Hollywood, appearing in blockbuster films like Fast and Furious, Hobbs and Shaw, standing shoulder to shoulder with his cousin, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He's dipped his toes into acting, into commercials, into the world outside of wrestling, and it's only the beginning. But ask him what truly matters, and the answer isn't money, fame, or championships. It's family. His wife, Galena, his 5 children, the life he protects fiercely away from the cameras.
Roman has said time and again, wrestling is his career, family is his legacy, and that's the heartbeat of his journey. Think about it. The boy from Pensacola, born into the legendary Anoa'i dynasty, who once struggled to find his place. The young athlete whose NFL dreams were shattered. The rookie in the Shield who was nearly crushed under the weight of rejection. The man who fought leukemia not once but twice and returned stronger. Every obstacle could have broken him. Instead, every obstacle forged him. That's why his tribal chief persona feels so real, because Roman isn't just playing a character. He is living proof of survival, of dominance, of resilience. The fans who once booed him now stand in awe, not because he's perfect, but because he refused to quit. And maybe that's the greatest lesson Roman Reigns leaves behind. You don't need universal approval to succeed. You don't need every hand clapping for you, every voice cheering your name. What you need is belief. Belief in yourself. Belief in your purpose. Belief that no matter how heavy the crown, you were meant to wear it. So what happens next? Maybe Roman continues his reign, stacking records that will never be broken. Maybe the bloodline collapses and he finds himself alone, stripped of power, forced to rebuild. Maybe Hollywood calls louder and the tribal chief steps into a new empire. Whatever the future holds, one thing is certain. Roman Reigns has already carved his place among the immortals. From a boy with a dream, to the head of the table, to a global icon, the journey has been nothing short of legendary.
And here's where the story comes back to you. Because this isn't just Roman's journey. It's a reminder of yours, of resilience, of rising when life tries to break you, of finding strength when the world doubts you. Roman Reigns didn't become the tribal chief overnight. He earned it through pain, through sacrifice, through an unshakable will. And so can you. Now, before we close this unforgettable journey, here's a challenge. Look at your own battles, the obstacles standing in your way, the voices telling you that you can't, and then ask yourself, what would Roman Reigns do? Would he back down? Or would he stand tall, stare into the storm and say, "Acknowledge me"? That's the power of his story. Not just entertainment, not just dominance, but inspiration. A reminder that you, too, have the power to rise, to fight, to lead. So if this journey moved you, if it lit even a spark of belief inside you, then stay with us. Subscribe, like, and share this story, because just like Roman's reign, our journey here is only beginning. And remember this, empires may fall, championships may change hands, but legends live forever. Roman Reigns is more than a wrestler, more than a tribal chief. He is proof that no matter the odds, greatness can be forged. And now the world watches, waiting, wondering, who will be the one to finally dethrone him? Until that day comes, the tribal chief sits at the head of the table. And his story will echo through generations.